How do I get an employment visa in the United States? Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States out of our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, and Washington, D.C. In today's video, we're going to talk about how you go from being an F1 student visa holder to an H1B visa holder. And the way that that's going to work for the most part is optional practical training, OPT. So today we're talking about F1s, OPT, and H1Bs. Now that's a lot of acronyms, a lot of letters, and I don't want to throw too much at you, but the best way to get an employment visa, an H1B work visa, to come to the United States is by coming first as an international student. Just yesterday, I gave a great talk to some fine international students at a school up in Chicago, and we went through the entire process of how someone goes from an F1 to an H1B, and I thought I'd shoot this video to explain to you what I told them and how I think the process works best. So, if you're admitted to the United States on an F1 student visa, you are able to stay for the duration of your status. So as long as you maintain your status, as long as you go to class, as long as you don't do anything to void the visa by perhaps working without permission or stop going to class, as long as you maintain that F1 student visa through graduation, after graduation, you're going to have the opportunity to apply for optional practical training. And you can do that before you go to graduate school, before you get your master's. It's a nice window there where you can get some real world training in your field of study and hopefully set yourself up for an H1B. Now, optional practical training is usually good for 1 year. If you are in a STEM field, science, technology, engineering, or math, you might be eligible for an additional 2 years of STEM OPT. That would allow you to be in the United States on your F1 3 years after graduation. You would have your 1 year of regular OPT and then your 2 years of STEM OPT, which means you'd be able to stay here for a total of 3 years. But for everybody else, for people not in the STEM field, it would just be that 1 year. But this is a very important year, and this is a very important step towards an H1B. Now, why do I say that? The reason I say that is because it's your best chance to find a sponsor to file an H1B visa application for you. Now, when I do my talk for international students, I begin explaining OPT by telling them how messed up our H1B system is. Now, number one, the government has not increased the number of available H1Bs for a very long time. It's been almost 30 years since the number of available H1Bs has increased. So that means there are more people applying for H1Bs than there are actually visas available. Specifically, there are 65,000 set aside for people from institutions of higher learning in the United States, and there's another 20,000 for people who have a master's degree from an institution of higher learning. So 65,000 if you have a bachelor's degree, 20,000 additional if you have a master's degree from a U.S. institution of higher learning, a college or a university. So that means there's 85,000. Well, last year there were almost 500,000 people that applied for these visas. So that means there's a lottery, which means every March there's now a lottery where people who want to sponsor an awesome international student like you can apply for this visa. And like I said, last year there were 500,000 applications for 85,000 slots. Those aren't great odds. And that's why, one reason why OPT is really important, because if you get that STEM extension, you're going to get 3 shots at the lottery. If you don't have a STEM field, then you really only have 1 shot at it. But that's your best shot. This is your best chance. So when you finish your studies, when you graduate, you're going to be able to do this 1 year of OPT. And hopefully you're going to go to work for an employer who's willing to sponsor you for an H1B. This is an important discussion to have sooner rather than later. You really don't want to waste your time on employers who aren't willing to sponsor you for an H1B, who aren't willing to go through that headache of the H1B. Let's talk about the headache. So we talked about the lottery, but the other big headache for employers is the fact that when you apply for an H1B, the employer has to promise to pay the prevailing wage. They don't want international workers to lower the prevailing wage. So let's say that you were going to do a software developer job in Cook County in Chicago, Illinois. We would have to go on to the Department of Labor's website, figure out what's a software developer average salary for Cook County in Chicago. And the employer would have to promise to pay that all 3 years during the employment during the H-1B visa. Well, most employers don't like having the government tell them how much they have to pay someone. So that's another strike against an H-1B worker. So they have to deal with the lottery. They have to deal with paying that salary. And then, of course, they have to pay a lawyer or they have to do all this paperwork themselves. That's the third big hurdle. The reason OPT is so important then is, number one, you can work for them without going through all that hassle. They don't have to file in the lottery. They don't have to pay all those fees. They can hire you and pay you whatever salary that they want to. So the OPT has a lot of appeal for people, but the real reason OPT is important is because it's a 365 or a 3-year job interview. What do I mean by that? Well, if you show up every morning at 10 in the morning and you work for a couple hours and you go take a long lunch and then you work till 3 and then you check out, that's a very different scenario than if you're the first one there at 7 in the morning and the last one to leave at 7 at night. So OPT is really important because every single day you're involved in a job interview. You might not remember it, you may not think of it, but the employer is watching. And the employer is saying to themselves, boy, is Sally or Sam, are they really good? Do I want to go through this hassle of all the things that I mentioned earlier in the video in order to sponsor someone for an H1B? A lot of times they won't want to do that. A lot of times they would just rather go find an American worker that they can pay whatever they want and that they don't have to go through all that sponsorship BS. But I know it sounds like a long shot. I know it sounds hard, but every single year, my firm is contacted by people who have become absolute rock stars on OPT and who the employers are willing to sponsor for an H1B. They're willing to go through the lottery. They're willing to go through all the headaches and all the paperwork, and they're willing to pay that prevailing wage. Why? Because this international student has made themselves indispensable to this company during OPT. That's the only reason an employer is going to go through it, because they need you. Now, the great thing is that because unemployment numbers are so low and because it's really hard to find quality individuals, there are more employers than ever that are willing to sponsor people for H1Bs and that are willing to go the OPT route to see if it's a good fit. So for all of these reasons, I want you to think about this. I want to encourage you to do this. I think this is your best route through the F1 student process into employment. This is your best shot at getting an employment-based green card. This is your best shot at getting an H1B. One last thing, you want to make sure that the job that you pick is a specialty occupation. And USCIS defines specialty occupations as occupations that require a specific degree in a specific field. And if you pick something that people are doing that job without that degree, it's going to cut down on your chances of getting the H1B approved. So for an example, a lot of times people want to get an H1B for a marketing degree. But the problem with getting an H1B for a marketing job is the fact that there are a lot of people doing a marketing job without a specific degree in marketing. That makes it harder to get an H1B approved. But for all these reasons, if you're thinking about going down this path and if your employer is looking for an attorney to help sponsor you for the H1B and to do all that paperwork, and you want to work with us, give us a call at 314-961-8200. You can also email us info@hackingimmigrationlaw.com. And then if you're just looking for free resources, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you get updated whenever we make videos like this one. You can also join us in our Facebook group. That's called Immigrant Home. Just search for that in Facebook and you'll find it. And there's people talking about H1Bs and OPT and all other kinds of visas and green cards and citizenship questions, all like that. And then if you have a question for me, you can come onto our Immigration Answers live show on YouTube or in that Facebook group where I'm answering people's questions every single day. And I hope you have a great day, and thanks for watching.